Welcome to a HoN hero tier list video. In this segment, I will be ranking all of the heroes in the game whose best role is carry into a tier list. And as we move along, I will explain my reasons for why I have given each hero their specific tier rank. Let's go ahead and begin. Now, this video will cover both hard carries and semi-carry heroes. And our first one on the list is going to be Swiftblade. So Swiftblade for me is a C tier carry hero. So Swiftblade is a hard carry, but I feel like nowadays Swiftblade, he is very easy to deal with, both in the laning phase where he kind of shines with his early magic immunity from Blade Frenzy, able to net hit kills, as well as his scaling throughout the mid and late game. In mid game, he's rather squishy and easy to kind of counter with items. He's running around on around 1000 HP, so he's kind of easy to lock down and gank with the right heroes. And with his swift slashes, it's kind of easy at high level of play to kind of counterplay him. So for me, Swiftblade, he can be very disruptive in the early game, but a lot of heroes are very good against him. And a lot of the time he doesn't get to shine in comparison to other carry heroes. Second on our list here is going to be Corrupted Disciple. Now we have our first S tier hero of the carry tier list. So Corrupted Disciple is a hard carry hero as well. And what is going to make him an S tier hero? So Corrupted Disciple, he is a very dominant laner. He doesn't really need any items to output damage. He just needs to run at you and drain you. So you can build him in many different ways. You can build him tanky, you can build him mobile. You can even build damage on him if you want, but he just does very well throughout all stages of the game. He crushes his lane. He can be running a tri-lane in competitive games where he can snowball with not only hero kills, but he can play defensively if he needs to and take jungle stacks with his corrupted conduit, or electric tide, I'm sorry it's called. So he farms very well, he lanes very well, he scales very well, he's very fast and mobile. He just does a lot of things really, really well. So Corrupted Disciple is going to get the first S tier rank here. Next on our list is going to be Soul Stealer. Soul Stealer for me, as of late, I would say Soul Stealer is a B tier carry hero. So Soul Stealer, he recently got a buff to his Staff of the Master, which has made him a lot more viable. He consistently outputs great damage. He doesn't really need any specific items per se to kind of transition into jungle and take out triple stacks really quickly. He just needs levels. So he can go a variety of different item builds. And as long as he has mana to nuke down the camps with his demon hands, he can flash farm really, really fast. So this hero can, if he's uncontested, he can pick up 500, 600, 700 GPM relatively easily. It's just a matter of him getting to that point. So his laning phase is what kind of holds him back from being an A or an S tier hero. He doesn't really lane very well. He needs to be babysat, which is why he has, over the course of HoN's lifetime, I would say, transitioned away from being a mid hero to being a carry hero specifically. Mid lane is just too hard to run him in nowadays. There's just too much action in the mid lane, and he just doesn't really hold his own. So he is really a hard carry at the end of the day. And he does have a lot of different item build paths he can go. So he can be more of a magic damage nuker or a right-click hero, depending on how you build him. But with his capability of flash farming, he is always kind of a hero that you need to kind of focus and shut down. So even if he does get shut down, he can always recover quite easily, which puts him in the upper ranked tier for me. Next on the list here is going to be Ravenor. Ravenor for me, I'm going to give Ravenor an A tier rank. So Ravenor, he is quite exceptional, but I don't quite feel he suits the S tier rank. So similarly to Corrupted Disciple, this hero can be tri-laned. He can do very well due to his skill set of being very aggressive. He has a long range stun initiation, great output, great laning phase output of magic damage burst between his two spells. So he lanes very well. He scales really well with his power overwhelming in the mid and late game. He can run at people. After building up a few charges, he starts to get haste speed and just runs at you. Hits you down through magic immunity with the superior magic right click. This hero is really, really scary. But the main reason why I can't put him in the S tier rank is that the hero kind of struggles in the mid game with farming. So unlike a lot of other carries who excel at clearing stacks and flash farming, Ravenor kind of struggles at doing that. It's one of his biggest weaknesses as a hero. That and having kind of low armor. So against agi carries, sometimes he can kind of struggle to man fight them at times because he himself doesn't have a lot of armor. But as far as like 1v1 goes, he usually is very, very strong in carry situations. So for me, I think due to his weak farming potential in the mid game, I have to give him the A tier rank, but he does do a lot of things very, very well in comparison to other carries. Next on the list here will be artillery. Artillery for me is unfortunately a D tier carry hero. So artillery is a pretty fun one. Unfortunately, in competitive games, not all that viable in comparison to other heroes. In order for him to deal his damage, he needs to stand still in one place. And as a carry hero, being kind of immobile is usually not going to work out in your favor. It means that you're going to be able to get caught by initiators rather easily. And him being a squishy agility hero means that he's going to get nuked down and caught rather easily. So it's very hard for artillery to position in high tier games. Now he can do a lot of damage and he is quite a good laner with his LRM. He doesn't really need items to output damage. So in the laning phase and early stages of the game, he is quite good. He has range, and he can slow. His ultimate at level 6 is almost always going to net him a kill because it has a long range initiation, it stuns, and he can hit you from far away. So he is strong, but when he struggles is in the mid game, when enemies build armor and they get storm spirits to counter your ultimate. It's really hard to chase people down and kill you, or you can get kills. And so he's good in laning phase, weak in mid game, then he's really good in end game because he can sit in his base and just turtle, and it's really hard to push against an artillery. You have to dive him, and that's only if his team allows you to do that. So he's really good at early game, he's really good at late game, but really bad in mid game, and that's what makes him really struggle. Oogie is our next hero here on the tier list, and Oogie for me is our second S tier hero on the list. What is making Oogie such a powerful hero? Well, this hero is just a monster, literally. He is so hard to deal with. His main weakness is that he is kind of lackluster in laning phase. Now, he does have the ability to spam his Tar Quakes, I believe they're called, his Q spell, which can allow him to output some good harass and kill potential by slowing multiple times. It is a skill shot, so at times it can be hard to land, but when paired with the right heroes, he can be devastating. So outside of having a weak laning phase, this hero builds into items that are just naturally good, not only for himself, but for his teammates. He builds mana boots, he builds Gnome's Wisdom, he builds Sheepstick, he builds Frostfield Plate. All of the items that an Oogie builds are really good at snowballing and controlling mid-game. I failed to also mention Icon of the Goddess. Again, I'm sure there's more I'm forgetting, but the point is Oogie is the type of carry that can just snowball in the mid-game and run away with games. He becomes unkillable, he runs at you, deals so much damage, and before you know it, he's just out of control. Another main weakness of the hero, I guess, is that he can't really push towers all that well because he mainly deals magic damage. But I feel like what he lacks in that category, he kind of makes up for with the things I previously mentioned. So he's just such a nuisance to deal with. I think if you've ever played against an Oogie, you can kind of relate to what I'm saying. So he has a few minor weaknesses, but they kind of are compensated for his overwhelmingly powerful traits that he has. So now we're going to go to the opposite end of the spectrum here, and our next hero on the list is, unfortunately for me, Solomon is going to get the E tier rank. So why is Solomon getting such a low rank? Why is he our first E tier hero? And this for me doesn't necessarily mean Solomon is like a crap tier hero or he's really bad, because Solomon can be one of those heroes that's really polarizing. He can this hero can just, if he free farms, he just runs away with games single-handedly. This hero is one of the few heroes in the game that could get 1000 GPM, for example. But the realistic nature of the matter is that this hero is just, he's so weak and vulnerable in the early stages of the game. In any competitive setting, in any game where the enemy is aware that they are against a Solomon, they will not let you free farm. They will always pressure you. They will force you to be running around and ruining your farm. And this hero doesn't really have a way of fighting back in the early and mid game. He kind of just needs to be free farming and snowballing and getting out of control, which is really hard to achieve a lot of the time, which is why we don't really see this hero like at all in competitive. He's very, very situational. He's good when his transmute ability has a purpose, something like an Ophelia or a Parasite comes to mind, somewhere where the transmute has effect. But those situations are just too rare and too low for this hero to really have any influence overall. So unfortunately for me, because he's so polarizing and he generally, more often than not, fails in his polarity, he just holds his team back too much, makes his team play 4 versus 5 for far too long, and doesn't come online early enough. And the whole point of a Solomon is to be like 1 to 2 items above the other team's carry, and that's how he kind of functions as his win condition. So next on our list here is going to be Shadowblade. Shadowblade for me is a B tier carry hero. So some of you might be thinking, why is Shadowblade so high? This hero is such, he's one of the hardest carries in the game in terms of item for item with another carry. He gets free stats from his ultimate, which is essentially free items in late game added onto the hero. This hero can have 200 to 300 agility or strength or intelligence, whatever stat you're going for. This hero can just right click like a truck, and that is kind of why I rate him so highly. He really only needs like 1 or 2 items to kind of come online and be an insane DPS hero. He lanes a lot better nowadays due to the buff of his soul sight, I believe it's called, the one where he goes into range form. He now has like a mini stun, so he can net kills a lot easier than he could in the past. So he's a better laner nowadays, especially with the ranged form. He scales incredibly hard. His main weaknesses is flash farming. The only way to really flash farm on a Shadowblade is to go Rune Cleaver, but that's not really a meta build. Usually you go either a Dawnbringer or you go Null Fireblade into Geo Bane, which those 2 items combined with each other are crazy amounts of DPS if you go Agility Shadowblade. So this hero can do a lot of things really well, and thus I feel he deserves a B tier rank. Next on the list is going to be Berserker. Berserker for me is another C tier carry hero. So Berserker gets the bottom half of the tier list for me because this hero is kind of niche. He's really good with his restrain for locking down all of these slippery heroes and being able to run at them with his mark for death, I believe it's called, where he gets vision of them. But a lot of the time what happens is Berserker just kind of gets kited in mid-game by a lot of lineups. You can build tablets and storm spirits and void talismans versus him, a lot of those inexpensive mid-game items. And if you're able to delay his ultimate and not let him get kills, then he starts to become ineffective. He takes more damage from his carnage. So he's really weak against nukers and any heroes, of course, that have blue border CC that can they don't care about his carnage debuff. So there are a lot of weaknesses that Berserker has to face. That on top of his really, really weak farming potential, he really has no mechanic to farm as a carry, so he's kind of forced into a fighting playstyle, which doesn't always work. sometimes forcing fights is not always going to work out for the best. So due to kind of being one-dimensional and kind of being forced into one specific playstyle, it's really hard for Berserker to always shine, thus netting him a C tier rank. Next on the list is going to be Sir Benzington, and Sir Benzington for me is our second A tier. This one is a semi-carry hero. I wouldn't say Benzington's really a hard carry. So Sir Benzington, this hero, I see him really often in competitive games, and that's because he is a fantastic tri-lane hero or a tri-lane carry. So he is one of the top tri-lane heroes. He has insane catch and reach in the laning phase. He has great burst damage potential, so he's normally played in burst damage tri-lanes to just net kills over and over. Typically you have another semi-carry hero paired with him, so he's not the main source of your damage. And then when the laning phase ends and the mid game comes around, he has Nightfall, so he's able to be farming anywhere on the map, and he can be joining into ganks and team fights with his global presence. So this hero is very mobile, very lethal, deals a lot of damage. But one of his main weaknesses is that he kind of he's weak against heroes that can solo kill him and burst him down in mid game. He runs around with 1000 HP. He dies to kind of any solo initiator style of burst damage hero, and a lot of the times those heroes are very common in competitive games. So as good as he is, he's still facing he's facing some issues that he has to deal with. So he has to be very careful that he doesn't get caught and bursted down, because he's kind of an easy target to bring down. So for me, he is just shy of the S tier rank. He's not a hard carry. He's kind of in between strength in the mid game and late game, but definitely very good in the early to mid game stages still. Next on our list here is going to be Mage Bane, and Mage Bane for me is a C tier carry hero. So Mage Bane, he did get a rework recently. This hero has changed quite a bit. He still has the mana combustion auto attack. He still has the mana void, where he deals damage based on your missing mana. But now he has a blink that slows and a mana feedback skill. So he has changed quite a bit. And I would say he is a much better laner than he used to be. That is one of his strengths. He's really good against mages. But outside of that, I'm still kind of unsure as to how strong this hero really is, how good he really scales in the end, because he's now a strength hero. He is not an agility hero anymore. So that kind of hurts his scaling power. If he was still an agility hero, I think I would rank him a little higher on this tier list. Maybe give him a B, but as a strength hero, he is notably weaker as a carry hero, I would say. Just mainly a lane dominator and a counter to specific mage style of carries. So kind of a niche hero. Still can be very effective, but not always. So I'm going to put him in the middle of the road. Next on the tier list is going to be Zemplar. This hero used to be called Mimics, I believe. I think he's Zemplar now. Sometimes I mix that up. Anyway, this guy, I'm going to give him the E tier rank. So unfortunately, we don't really see this hero at all in competitive play. And you might be saying, well, why don't we see Zemplar in competitive play? And well, this hero can be effective sometimes, but like a lot of the weaker tier heroes, they're kind of niche and harder to make work. And this hero, he is countered fairly easily, I would say, by lots of items in the game. Arcane Bomb comes to mind as the big one, which can blow up all of his illusions. Not right away. There is kind of like an invulnerability period when he spawns the ultimate, where you can not get blown up by Arcane Bomb, but after that wears off, the ultimate's kind of lackluster. He does farm very quickly, and he does right-click pretty decently with his passive, but if you're able to blink away from his wall, if you're able to deal with his illusions, this hero is really not that scary in the end, and it's really hard to make use of him outside the early and mid-game stages, I would say. So, pretty easy to kind of deal with the Zemplar. Next on the list is going to be Clanks, and Clanks for me is a A-tier carry hero. So, Clanks has, throughout his time in HoN, always been kind of a really strong carry hero. The hero lanes decently. I wouldn't say he's like an amazing laner. Typically, we see him ran in a tri-lane or a dual lane where he's babysat by a defensive support because he is a very squishy and fragile carry hero. But when you pair him with something like an Andromeda, a Moira, a Monarch, you guys get the picture. The list goes on and on. A hero that can protect him from dying. This hero does so much damage. And he kites you. He's flying around, going over terrain and whatnot, getting to places where other heroes can't go, and he just hits you from far away. He slows you, and then his ultimate can slow through magic immunity, so he's dealing tons of damage. He's hard to catch, and he's just a menace to deal with. He flash farms very decently with one farming item and his bangs and his lackey. And a lot of the times we see this hero ran in tri-lanes just to secure him his farm and his scaling. So I would say this hero could have definitely been S tier, but recently he got a range nerf, and I think we haven't really been seeing a whole lot of Clanks because he lost some of his laning power. So he's a lot weaker in lane as well as mid and late game and whatnot, with being able to chase down people and attack them from far away. It's a lot easier to get to the Clanks now than it once was, with a little bit of a range nerf. So I think due to him kind of falling out slightly in the meta, I would have to give him the A rank over the S tier rank. But if this was maybe a couple of years ago, I would definitely have put Clanks in the S tier category. Next on the list is going to be Gemini, and Gemini for me is a S tier carry hero, one of my favorite carry heroes. I would say out of all these heroes we've gone over so far, he is probably my favorite one here, but close with some of the other ones. Gemini for me, this hero is just he does so many things really well, and he's good in laning phase. He has a stun, he has a slow. He's mobile with his jump, with his Twin Fangs jump. He can flash farm with different item builds. He can flash farm whether you want to do it with your spells or whether you want to build lots of stats and just be bulky and fight a lot. So he's great at fighting in the early game. He's decent in laning phase. He is very mobile with items like Dawnbringer or Geobane. Because of his passive, he gets movement speed based on his agility, so he in late game runs around more or less hasted with agility items. He can be in two places at once with his fire and ice dog, so you can farm, you can set up ganks, you can port the dogs around, you can send them to base. He's really efficient in what he does, and he can be leveling in two places at once, so he has the ability to kind of snowball in XPM and GPM if he's given the space to do that. And we can occasionally see him ran in tri-lanes as well. Typically not where we usually see him. It's usually in a dual lane, but this hero is just fantastic from top to bottom. So a carry that can kind of participate and be active early on, as well as scale really, really hard due to his I forget the name of it, but the passive. Next on the list here is going to be Bushwhack. Bushwhack for me is another D tier carry hero. So Bushwhack gonna fall a little bit short here on the list, gonna net the bottom half of the tier list. And I feel like this hero is just generally weak overall. He doesn't lane necessarily that great. He doesn't have like a nuke or a stun or anything. He has a slow that he can kind of cast every now and then. His sidestep is not able to disjoint anything, even though he can change position. So he's kind of good at kiting people, but he's really squishy in lane. If he gets caught by one spell, he usually ends up dying. He does carry decently well, but he doesn't really flash farm all that fast. He needs, like, I would say a hyper crown, honestly, to farm decently well. So with this hero, you can't really farm that well. You kind of need to fight with him, build into fighting items. And the one thing that he really has going for him, honestly, that kind of kept me from putting him in the E tier was that he can do Kongors by himself. He just needs like Whispering Helm, and I don't even think he needs level 11 to do it. It just depends on what timer in the game you're at. But level 11 in Whispering Helm is for sure a solo Kongor, as long as somebody can tank the end of it. So that is one of the main strengths of Bushwhack, is that he can solo Kongors and get your team lots of buffs throughout the game. But there's just too many weaknesses that this hero has, and although he can carry really, really hard, The hard part of, pun intended, the hard part of hard carrying is getting to that part. So for me, I'm gonna fall short here on the list, going to be in the D tier. Next on the list is Moon Queen, and Moon Queen for me is an A tier carry hero. So Moon Queen is a hero that is really, really scary if she is allowed to free farm. She is, I would say, one of the fastest farming carry heroes in the game. She just has like this bread and butter cookie cutter item build that's worked on her throughout HoN's history, which is the Steam Boots, Whispering Helm, Geometer's Bane, Shrunken Head build. And then from there, it can go to a number of items: Wingbow, Genjuro, Symbol of Rage. And Moon Queen has just never really shifted away from that item route. It's just so good on her. Her glaives, or moon glaives, I think it's called, just let her farm jungle stacks so fast with the Whispering Helm and Steam Boots. And she can take out Ancients fast as well. This hero carries about as hard as the best of the carry heroes in the game because she has a passive that gives her damage boost, and she has an amazing teamfighting ultimate in the Moon Finale. So the main weaknesses of the Moon Queen is that she is really weak on lane. So you see this hero, you have to man up on her and shut her down, not let her free farm, because chances are whatever carry hero you have is not going to farm as fast as a Moon Queen is, or is going to team fight as well as a Moon Queen is. So you see a Moon Queen, you typically want to force aggression on her and slow down her farming because she is just really, really good at that. So a lot of the times in competitive games, we see Moon Queen defensive tri-lanes, 2 supports, secure her farm. She gets her core items, and then she just kills everything, gets her supports gold, and then the game kind of goes from there. So for me, I couldn't put Moon Queen in the S tier. If this was 2012 when there was a Keeper Tempest Moon Queen meta, Moon Queen was definitely S tier. But in 2022, Moon Queen's an A tier hero for me. Still really, really solid, and one of the best carry heroes for sure, up there with the best in the game. Next on the list here will be Silhouette, and Silhouette for me is an A tier carry hero. This one, like Gemini, this one is my favorite carry hero. Very, very fun one to play, but I couldn't unfortunately give her an S tier rank because Silhouette does definitely lack in the laning phase. She is one of those heroes that you can just man up on very easily, similar to how we just talked about the Moon Queen. Now, unlike a Moon Queen, Silhouette doesn't really flash farm that fast, but she flash farms decently with her blades and her Death Lotus. So typically you just need items like Nullstone and any form of mana regen or sustain to kind of tank the camps and farm them, flash farm stacks. So she is kind of weak in the early game, but with the weakness of her early game, she makes up for in her mid and late game power. She is able to build kind of, I would say, inexpensive carry item builds like Nullstone and Portal Key, and she can go any number of agility and defensive item routes from there. But she is a very hard hero to catch and shut down because she can be in 2 places at once. She can be tricky. She can force you to chase her around, which is typically what happens in Silhouette games. You're forced to kind of chase her around, and a lot of the times, if you're able to maneuver the Silhouette well, she has you chasing so long that it becomes too late, and she is now pushing your base and split pushing you to the point where it is too hard to deal with. So Silhouette in the mid and late game becomes a monster to deal with on her own. She can just single-handedly wreak havoc. And for me, I give her the A tier rank. Next, we have Armadan. Armadan, for me, is unfortunately going to fall short here. He's going to net himself the E tier rank. So Armadan, unfortunately, I would say he's just kind of too weak of a carry. He has a really good early and mid game, but after that, he just really falls off. He becomes easy to deal with. He typically just builds really tanky and runs at you and makes you try to fight him. But it's really easy to just split push and dodge the Armadan. He doesn't really have a way to catch you and keep you in place. So in order for Armadan to work, you have to kind of run him in push lineups or these team fight lineups that kind of force you into fighting him or your base will die. Otherwise, you can just avoid him. get items yourself, wait until you're able to deal with him. He kind of tapers off after the mid game kind of fizzles out. So for me, Armadan is just a little bit too niche and too easy to deal with. But he can definitely farm and get to the points where he wants to be relatively fast. It's just a matter of closing out games for him that can kind of be tricky sometimes. Next on the list is Dr. Repulsor. Dr. Repulsor, another one of my favorite heroes. I'm going to give him the B tier rank. Dr. Repulsor, he just, I couldn't put him in the A or the S tier. This hero is just, he is one of the weakest laning phase carries, I think, in the game. Until he gets level 6, if he's dual laned, he typically just suffers. He's really easy to lock down and kill. He really needs that level 6 before he can kind of come online and start to do stuff. I mean, granted, that doesn't take too long. That's like 5, 6, 7 minutes into the game. But by that point, if he's been focused a lot, he can have a few deaths at that point. And it kind of forces your team, at least in competitive games, to really work your whole lineup around the Dr. Repulsor. And if you can make it out of laning phase, this hero is fantastic. All he needs is really like an icon of the goddess, and he starts to output tons of damage. He has tons of sustain if he builds into further like sustained items like Gnome's Wisdom, Nullstone, even like Hellflower, stuff like that is all common on him. Shrunken Head. You typically just build mana regen, defensive items on this hero, and even with defensive items, he does so much damage with his passive and his ultimate. So in mid and late game, this hero becomes hard to deal with because he can pick you off from so far away. He forces you to stick close together, which is why you have to focus him in the early game and shut him down. So because he has a couple of weaknesses and he can be kind of predictable and easy to deal with at times, I have to give him the B tier rank. But this is definitely a hero that can be very scary. And if you give him free farm, a lot of the times he's going to make you pay for that. Next on the list, we have Malikin. And Malikin for me is a S tier carry hero. Malikin is a fantastic hero. He lanes very well. He has lane sustain with his green sword. He has good kill potential with his sword throw, which can slow you, deals damage, and he can also use it as an escape if he needs to dodge ganks. It is a disjoint. He's a tanky hero that's naturally harder to burst down and kill, so he's great at fighting man-up dual lanes compared to a lot of other carry heroes on this list. So he lanes really well, he can kill very well, he farms jungle very well with his possession, giving him splash and ranged form, and having sustain with his green sword. And he just naturally builds into... He has different item builds, actually. He can build fighting items or farming builds, and he can do quite well with both builds. He can even be tri-laned to some degree. And on top of that, I would say he carries fairly decently. He can build a lot of different item paths on him. I wouldn't say he's like the best hard carry because he is a strength carry and not an agility carry, but he definitely can man fight other carry heroes prior to super late game, and he can do really well. So for me, I think he's warranted the S tier rank. Next on the list here is Dhampir. Dhampir for me is a C tier carry hero. So Dhampir is kind of a snowball carry hero. He kind of thrives on hero kills, getting like 1 to 2 core items, whether it's like a light brand or a portal key. If he's going to build into something like a Dawnbringer or a Grimoire of Power, depending on how you want to play him. But the portal key is kind of the big one. He's just this snowball magic damage carry hero. He doesn't really provide right-click presence throughout the game, I would say. He's just this bursty carry hero. So he kind of has this window in the game where he kind of takes over the game with his farm, and he just runs around and kills people. He's good in like fighting lineups and push lineups because he can sustain himself really well with his ultimate healing him and his flight healing him. So he's kind of hard to burst down a lot of the times. So he can even be good against mana lanes. But I would say what this hero lacks in his mid and late game presence, I would say, in comparison to other carry heroes, I can't really put him at the top of the list, and it kind of hurts his competitive viability. So a lot of the times he's kind of ran with other carries that kind of supplement what he lacks, which is right-click damage. So he doesn't naturally carry on his own very, very well. But situationally, he can be quite good, and he can take over games at times. Next, we have Flint Beastwood. And Flint Beastwood, he is going to be, yet again, another E-tier carry hero. So this hero, unfortunately, not going to make the cut for me. He is just too easy to deal with. He doesn't really... I would say he doesn't really farm that fast. He lanes okay, but not that well. He can be really easy to catch and burst down, similar to an artillery, but definitely weaker than an artillery in laning phase, I would say. He's kind of good at securing kills that can slip away from you, but other than that, he loses a lot of man fights. You get in his face, and he's really sad. He has to use his range to kind of make up for what he lacks with fighting power. And I think due to his lack of farming speed, it's kind of hard to flash farm on the Flint Beastwood. It's really hard to get to that point where he's 6 slotted and super duper scary with long range and whatnot. So for me, Flint just doesn't make the cut. Not really a competitively viable carry hero. Next, we have Hammerstorm. Hammerstorm for me is a C tier carry hero. So Hammerstorm, like a lot of the other heroes in his tier, he has some strong points. He can farm very effectively with his built-in cleave. So he really just needs levels to farm. He can lane decently well because he has an AoE stun. His mana pool is kind of limiting. He doesn't really have the ability to do too many hammer throws. But there are items in the game like Lunar Tear and whatnot and Chalice that kind of help him with that once he gets them. So he is kind of limited with mana pool, but his laning phase is not too bad. He has a way to deal damage and set up kills, and he's able to kind of flash farm. But once he gets farmed, he struggles with what a lot of other carry heroes struggle with, and that's the fact that he can get kited so easily. And he's really weak against a lot of other heroes. So it's kind of easy to play around the Hammerstorm, even if he has been given a good time. So I feel like that just kind of holds him back way too much as a carry hero. And thus I have to give him a middle of the road marker here with the C tier rank. Next on the list is Chronos, and Chronos for me is a D tier carry hero. So Chronos, not the worst carry hero in the game by all means, definitely can be very effective, but like a lot of the other heroes at the bottom half of the tier list, he just takes too long to come online. He needs too many items. He's kind of weak in laning phase. It's really easy to man up on him and shut him down. And his entire playstyle kind of revolves around his ultimate. So his ultimate is kind of his bread and butter. He can hold any carry hero or anybody down in the game and be able to hit them. But in organized competitive team play games where there's 5 versus 5, all you need is a tablet or a storm, and you can just position correctly against a Chronos, and you can save the guy he goes on and just kite his Chronosphere. So it's really hard to make a Chronos work in competitive play against organized teams. And because of how long he takes to come online and start to become really scary, it's just really easy to play around him. So unfortunately, I have to give him a D tier rank. Next, we have Predator, and Predator is going to be the same story here. He is going to also get a D tier rank. So Predator, a lot of similarities to Chronos, although he's not as mobile, of course. He doesn't have a leap like Chronos does. He has a leap, but not a leap that makes him invulnerable and disjoint stuff. He can close the gap and get on top of you, but he is very easy to kite and deal with in mid-game. This hero does not farm all that fast. He needs a Thunderclaw or a Hyper Crown to even look at jungle stacks. And he's really only, I would say he's a niche carry hero. He's really only a good pickup when you're going up against other strength carry heroes or strength heroes that you like heavy strength lineups that you can't really kill easily, because that's when his Carnivorous becomes really effective. He gets healed and deals more damage based on the enemy hero's HP that he's attacking. So he's more of a niche carry hero. Doesn't really farm all that well. Is very easily kited. Can be decent in laning phase because he has Stonehide, so he's kind of okay against man-up lanes. But if you catch him and jump on him, a lot of the times you can either burst him down or force him to kind of just lose fights because he can't attack fast enough and turn it around in early stages of the game. So in general, just a little bit weak of a hero and too niche when he actually shines. Nomad is next on the list, and he will be another C tier carry hero. So Nomad, he can be quite effective against mana lanes. He is great at dealing early laning phase burst damage and being kind of slippery with his Mirage Strike and his Sandstorm. But with that being said, against organized teams in competitive games, it's kind of easy to play around his ultimate and just carry dust and rev wards for him and catch him with initiators. He's a really squishy agility carry that runs around with like 1000 HP, similar to the Swiftblade that I talked about earlier and some other heroes. And although he can deal great amounts of right-click damage really fast, this hero, the way Nomad functions is he needs to kill somebody really quickly to reset his Mirage Strike so that he can keep Mirage striking and killing heroes. And it's really hard to utilize this mechanic. It's really hard to make this work in organized games because teammates have the ability to save each other and use items, and just at high level team play, it's really hard to execute a Nomad very well. It can be possible against some lineups. There are games where his edge counter is really good against lots of projectiles and whatnot. You can trigger the ultimate really easily. A good edge counter can definitely win team fights and whatnot, and Nomad can be a snowbally carry hero, but more often than not that doesn't happen, and thus we don't really see him picked up all that much in high tier play. Next is Sandrath, and Sandrath is another S tier carry hero. So Sandrath, for me, he is just good in general throughout almost all stages of the game. His real main weakness is his laning phase. He's not really the best laner, but he can be evasive by going through trees and escaping ganks and stuff. The main thing with Sandrath is that even if you have a bad laning phase, which can happen to a lot of carries, he has the ability to just be anywhere on the map once he hits level 6. So as soon as level 6 hits, he's setting up a gank, he's teleporting into mid lane, he's teleporting on the enemy carry, he's killing a high net worth value hero, and he's recovering all that gold that he struggled to get in the laning phase if he wasn't given a good time. So unlike other carry heroes, he can just be anywhere on the map as soon as he hits level 6 and start to recover. Once he gets his items going, he starts to flash farm really fast, and he just picks people off one by one. Unless you're specifically a push lineup or a team fighting lineup and you're grouped up all the time, which doesn't always happen, Sandrath is just able to, throughout all stages of the game, start to pick off people with his teammates. And that just slowly adds up over time, and he just becomes this late game powerhouse with all these illusions that you have to buy arcane bombs and all this stuff to deal with him. He's just such a menace. He's so hard to deal with, and because of that, I have to give him the S tier rank. Next on the list is Madman, and Madman for me is A tier carry hero. Madman for me has always been a fantastic carry hero. I think if we would go back a few years ago, I would definitely put him in the S tier category. But nowadays, Madman is a little bit weaker, I would say, with nerfs to his, gash. He used to hit harder. His barrel roll used to be a little bit easier to disjoint stuff with. I think you can't use barrel roll when you're immobilized anymore, which you used to be able to do to like disjoint follow-up stuff. So his elusiveness kind of went down a little bit, as well as I think he got a nerf to his stock time, either the speed or the invisibility. I can't remember the specifics, but the point is he used to be a much stronger hero. Definitely was S tier back in the day, but nowadays he's been toned down a little bit. Still a really good hero. He carries really hard, he lanes really well, he can set up ganks, he can build different items, he can do Kongors with lifesteal rather easily. This hero just does so many things so well. And his main weakness is, I guess, mid-game. When he doesn't have a shrunken head, he's kind of easy to jump on and catch him and burst him down because he's an agility hero. But a lot of heroes have that issue. So not really a reason, I think, for me to rate him low. He just does so many things well that I have to give him an A tier rank. Next on the list, we have Sapphire, and Sapphire for me is a S tier carry hero. So why does Sapphire get such a high rank? Sapphire is a hero that lanes really well. She has good range. She has a stun. She has a defensive shield. So she's great in laning phase. She can set up kills with her shard and her stun. And this hero can rotate into the jungle really early on, kill 2 triple stack camps really easily. And this hero can snowball in GPM exceptionally fast. It's hard to shut her down because she lanes well. She can be dual lane, tri lane. She can solo 1v1 because of her quick shield. So she's great in lots of scenarios. She flash farms really well. She scales really hard as a carry hero because she can, in team fights, throw down her shard and deal massive amounts of AoE magic damage. And although I would say one of her main weaknesses is she's not really good against magic immune heroes because her shard deals magic damage, she definitely scales really hard because her right clicks still deal quite a lot of damage. So more of a bursty damage carry, but definitely a hero that scales exceptionally well. So she definitely receives an S tier rank for me. Next on the list is going to be Zephyr. Zephyr is an A tier carry hero. Zephyr is a hero that doesn't really need any items to farm. He just needs to be a little bit tanky, and all of a sudden he's just cycloning down jungle stacks, creep waves. He's flash farming, pushing waves, killing jungle camps, and he's all of a sudden he's tanky, hard to burst down, hard to deal with. And after laning phase and once mid game rolls around, he just kind of runs at you, really hard to kill, and he's dealing tons of damage around him. So this hero is like a mid game semi-carry hero. Definitely not a hard carry. He doesn't really scale too much as a right clicker, so you typically want to end the game earlier rather than late with a Zephyr, but he can be really difficult to deal with, and he lanes really well against melee heroes specifically. So definitely for me, getting an A tier rank, really strong, mid game carry hero. Next on the list is Taro, and Taro for me is unfortunately a D tier carry hero. So this hero struggles with a lot of things similar to heroes like Flint, Beastwood, and Bushwhack. But what I will say about Taro is that she is a really good laner. She has her Bound by Fate, which can net kills in laning phase, and her Ricochet, I think it's called, the Q spell, can deal lots of magic damage and burst people down. As well as her second spell is pretty good against Invis heroes, so she's kind of niche in that aspect. But this hero is really similar to Flint. You just, if you can catch her, you typically just burst her down and kill her. She's really hard to stay alive with. She's really hard to utilize in mid game, getting her to late game. Because in late game, this hero is a monster. She doesn't really need damage items. She just needs kind of mobility and survivability, and her ultimate just naturally crits and deals damage on its own. So she outputs tons of damage, but it's being able to deal the damage that's her main issue. She just gets caught, gets bursted down, and then all of a sudden you have no carry anymore. This hero struggles with a lot of phases of the game, unfortunately, but she is a really good laning phase carry specifically. So unfortunately I have to give her a D tier rank. Not really all that viable in competitive play. Next, we have Amun-Ra on the list. Amun-Ra is a E tier hero, unfortunately for me. Amun-Ra is this magic damage, DPS, snowball, in-your-face style of hero. But he's just too easy to deal with. He's a pretty good laner, I would say. Pretty good early to mid-game hero. But this hero just lacks in too many departments. It's just, I don't know. Amun-Ra has not really seen any competitive play for a long time. I think on his release he was a really strong hero, but ever since then he's just been this really easy hero to deal with. So I can't really rate him too highly, unfortunately. Doesn't really scale into late game as a hard carry. He does deal more damage with his I forget the name of it, the second skill. But again, he is only magic damage focused. Doesn't really transition into a right-click style of hero, unfortunately. So he does taper off. Have to give him the fat E, unfortunately. Dark Lady, on the other hand, gonna give her the B tier rank. Dark Lady is one of those carry heroes that you would think she's kind of a weak laning phase hero, but she has her Tainted Soul. She can always get last hits. She can be 1v2, 1v3, 2v2, and she can do decently well. She can struggle at times, post laning phase into mid game, where she's trying to build into her cleaver, where she only has a cleaver and she's like 1000 HP. She's kind of easy to burst down and kill. But Dark Lady can do good in a lot of situations. Like I said, she can be put against the tri lane and still get farm from safe distance. But this hero, the reason I can't give her an A or an S tier rank is this hero just needs too many items and too much time to come online and be like a scary threat and presence in the game. Getting to that point is the tough part. If you can get to that point, this hero is insane. She can get solo kills by herself, which is what a lot of carries struggle with. Honestly, this hero can jump on you and silence you and slow you. So she can always, if she has farm, get solo kills, which is a great aspect of a carry hero. But typically it just needs too long to come online. Needs like 3-4 items before she kind of takes over game. So just a little bit too slow, unfortunately, but definitely a good hero. I'm going to give her the B tier rank. Next on the list will be Scout. Scout for me is a C tier carry hero. So Scout is, I would say, really good with free farm specifically because he can run around the map and set up kills with his advantage. And it's really hard to kind of keep track of where Scout is at all times. He's a really mobile carry hero. He is kind of weak in mana planes or against mana planes in 2v2 situations because he doesn't have an amazing skill set for those lanes. But if he does struggle, one of his benefits is that he can just TP to other lanes and set up ganks with his invis. So he can always be kind of an active carry hero, as well as being a great flash farmer with a rune cleaver. But kind of easy to play against a Scout at times. He's got a predictable play style. Kind of hard to make work in competitive games, I would say. So kind of a niche carry hero. I would say there are situations where he's really good, but more often than not, it's harder than not to make him work. Jeraziah next on the list. A lot of you guys writing in the comments have been asking, where is Jeraziah? Why is he not a support? Why is he not in the mid tier list? And for me, Jeraziah, I think his best role is carry. I'm going to put him in the B tier category. So Jeraziah for me is a quite good carry hero. He is naturally hard to kill with his heal and his charm. He has a passive that allows him to scale and deal damage. And recently he got his charm buffed, I believe, where like dispels don't dispel the entire ability anymore. They dispel something like 75 or 80% of the spell. So he is a little bit buffed. And with the Staff of the Master, he can give charm like to his whole team or whatever. I forget exactly how it works, but this hero is definitely, I think, an underrated carry hero in the game. He's good against mana planes because he can sustain himself. I think you typically want to build Dawnbringer on this guy into like Portal Key, and you can go any number of items from there. But he slows you, he gets on top of you. It's really hard to run away from him. He's dealing tons of damage with his passive and his slows and whatnot. So I think he's an underrated carry for sure. Gonna give him the B tier rank. Next on the list is Calamity, and Calamity for me is also a B tier carry hero. So Calamity, great laning phase hero, good against dual lanes, good in 1v1 situations, doesn't really need any specific items to farm. You can build her kind of with early to mid game items like Energizer, Astrolabe, Brass Knuckles are all good on her. You can go straight into a Dawnbringer and she's really effective, being able to build mobility on her and just chase people down with her dragons. This hero can be really effective, but she's also really squishy and easy to deal with. So for that reason, I'd have to give her a B tier rank. I wouldn't say she really flash farms incredibly fast, but she can definitely scale really well because of her passive. being able to steal stats from enemies. So Calamity, a pretty solid hero overall, but she's kind of dropped off in competitive play. Next on the list is going to be Forsaken Archer, and Forsaken Archer for me is an S tier carry hero. So a lot of the times we compare Forsaken Archer to Moon Queen, kind of the flash farming ranged carry hero. She's got the split shot. Forsaken Archer to me is just a little bit of a better Moon Queen. She lanes better than a Moon Queen. It's harder to man up on a Forsaken Archer in like 2v2 and tri lanes. So Forsaken Archer is a much better tri lane hero. You can run her in a defensive tri lane. She can set up kills, and she can rotate into the jungle with just some levels. Doesn't even necessarily need any specific items. She can just take out jungle stacks with her crippling volley and her split shot. She can even use her piercing arrows to take out triple stacks. It's on a relatively low cooldown and mana cost. So this hero just flash farms really fast. Can hit 5 heroes in the team fight, similar to Moon Queen with her glaive bouncing. This hero is just overall just really, really solid. Great throughout all stages of the game. Great at farming. Just not too many weaknesses overall for the Forsaken Archer. Next we have Puppet Master on the list. And Puppet Master for me is another S tier carry hero. So a couple of S tier carry heroes in a row here. But Puppet Master, he's always just been a solid choice. He's similar to some of the other heroes on this list. He's a great tri-lane hero. He has lockdown, which a lot of carries in the game struggle to find for themselves. It's hard for them to get solo kills. Puppet Master can hold people in place, or his targets in place, for long periods of time. He deals lots of damage with his Whiplash, and he has his Voodoo Puppet, which gives him a lot of magic burst. So he lanes really well. He farms really well with his Whiplash, so he can flash farm jungle stacks. He can set up hero kills. He scales relatively well with having that passive built in. And the one main difference is that he is a squishier intelligence carry, but he definitely makes up for that with his mid and late game presence. So even though he might not be the hardest scaling carry hero, he definitely has the ability to scale into the late game. The Puppet Master, great throughout all stages of the game. And I believe here our last hero on the tier list is going to be Valkyrie. So Valkyrie, a semi-carry hero, she is going to net herself the B tier rank. So Valkyrie, she is great on dual lanes, aggressive or defensive dual lanes, setting up kills with another stunner. She typically can build into different items. She could go like Nullfire Blade, Geobane, just be more of like a right click presence with Brass Knuckles. She can go into more of a magic style of build with the Staff of the Master and whatnot. So she can be either a magic damage semi-carry or a right click semi-carry hero. She doesn't really hard carry all that well, I wouldn't say, but she lanes really well. She has great abilities for setting up hero kills with teammates, and she has an escape, which allows her to either close the gap for kills or to escape and disjoint stuff. So she's evasive in lane. She's got great range and great spells for killing. And there was one other thing I was going to say. Oh, all right. Her Valkyrie Prism. That is the main reason why you pick up the Valkyrie. She is great in mid-game at setting up kills with her entire team. The Valkyrie Prism alone, when you play against that spell, it feels like it's always up. It has like a 1.5 or 1 minute cooldown. I think it has like a 1 minute cooldown after the invis effect wears off. So this spell is more or less almost always up, and it's always on your mind when you see the entire enemy team missing. And it's really difficult at times to have rewards and bound eyes and dusts ready at your disposal. So this hero drains a lot of resources when you play against her, and that alone is an effective trait that she has. But she just is so hard to play around those pickoffs that a lot of the times in mid and late game specifically, getting pickoffs with the Valkyrie Prism can be devastating. So this hero for me gets a B tier rank. And that will conclude our carry hero tier list. So as always, guys, I will be interested to see your thoughts in the comments below. Let me know what you guys think of the tier list and how I rated the heroes and your opinions on them. And as always, if you like the video, make sure to drop a like, and if you haven't already, to hit that subscribe button. So thank you for watching, and hope to see you in the next one.